Hey, Step Back fans, it's your boy Tristan here for the Armchair Historian with an urgent news update video. We got a massive bombshell of an announcement from the devs at B3. The Middle Ages we all studied in school is getting a massive new expansion pack. They're calling it the Islamic Golden Age. It promises to turn the whole lore upside down about what Western civilization means. And we finally find an origin to that Renaissance we've all heard about. Now, we can get to all the upcoming features and patch notes, but I know you guys want to know first and foremost, what is the lore? History's lore is vast at this point and complicated, so what could this Islamic Golden Age be bringing to the story? How are we going to get a whole period of unprecedented growth in philosophy and the sciences in an area your average history casual thinks is underpowered compared to Europeans? Luckily, you've got me here to take care of the hard bits, so that you can pwn all the noobs right on launch day. So obviously the expansion focuses on the Islamic world, which has spent several centuries since its humble beginnings spawning in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century. In a very brief time, the Islamic world has grown from this to this in about 128 years. But you see, it's much more complicated than that. Islam is a religion, but also by the time of Muhammad's death, a political entity, a young empire. Arable land and fresh water are severely lacking in Islam's spawn point. The Islamic Empire thus expanded with surprising success into areas held by a crumbling Byzantine and Sassanid empires. However, most of the region won't be very Islamic for some centuries yet. So while you are a Muslim ruler outside of Arabia, the Muslim population won't likely be higher than about 10%. So you're going to need to be balancing a lot of different interests. Many people in the Middle East who belong to small, tribal, polytheistic belief structures would find a conversion to Islam as necessary. This was not just for spiritual reasons, but as a way for disparate tribes to unite under a single banner and become powerful together. So some of this conquest might just be acquiring new tribes under their banner, which is good. Not many people in this area in this time have maxed out diplomacy stats. So this comes with some new playstyles. Tribal alliances. Sounds fun. You just need to show the need for a more extensive, more integrated network. Then, say becoming Muslim is how you join in, and people will do it. Some Muslims persecuted in the 7th century by the Quraysh tribe also fled to Somalia and adopted a Muslim community there. So, there's even a new East African campaign. But a golden age? What about it makes it golden? Well, the devs said that the idea of a golden age is more of a retrospective name given by the English Orientalists in the 19th century. So, if you want to get to the core of that, you'll just have to hold out for Victoria 3. Looking at the lore, we probably shouldn't have been surprised. There were some signs of a golden age coming. If you look at the game novelization providing the canon for Muslim lore, the Quran, as well as some of the collections of the Prophet Muhammad's sayings called the Hadiths, you will see that an explosion of education, science, and philosophy was always going to be important to this religious group. One key thing is that they don't care about the origin of knowledge. One hadith even goes as far as to claiming Muhammad said, "Seek knowledge." Even in China, a Muslim scholar by the name of Burhan al-Din will claim that education is prescribed for all. Muslims will enjoy much higher literacy rates than Europeans due to their emphasis on learning and education as part of a well-lived life. Schools would not only give kids a good grasp of Islamic law and analysis, but bring young scholars from different classes and backgrounds together to share ideas. That multicultural bonus really can't be beat. In the late game, this process of education will be formalized by unlocking a new building known as a madrasa. It mixes a mosque, boarding house, and library together into an authoritative source of learning. Some of these can even develop into the first universities which give out degrees. There are literally hundreds of Quranic verses which encourage studying nature and often interpreted as an encouragement of scientific inquiry. And this is reflected in the expansion pack. This Islamic empire gives massive buffs to scholars across disciplines with massive financial backing. One standard comparison being the amount invested just in the translation movement being roughly twice that of the modern UK's Medical Research Council. Twice! For translation! If you go to Baghdad, you're going to find a massive library, which might as well be the symbol of the whole damn expansion pack. It's called the House of Wisdom, and was built by Caliph al-Mansur. The House of Wisdom is so central to the Islamic Golden Age that its building and destruction are considered the beginning and end of it. It began as a public library collecting works in both Persian and Arabic. It was one of the largest collections of rare books in the world at the time, if not the biggest. The House of Wisdom primarily housed the products of a great translation movement, which took great works from Greek and Syriac and made them into Arabic. This is a massive reveal for the lore. All of those Greek philosophers the Westerners call keystones of their civilization, well, it turns out in this period, Europeans burned them as heretical knowledge, while the Muslims kept and translated them. So, our copies of works like Plato's Republic are actually translations from Arabic. Now, when looking at the story, we're gonna see a lot of influences from other places we've already been. The Greeks, for example, will feature heavily in this expansion pack. Many of the lands the Islamic Empire expanded into were formerly Byzantine, and with Islamization being a slow process, a lot of Greek-speaking Christians are going to be around. Many amazing contributors to Islamic civilization were adherents of the Eastern Church, also known as Nestorians. I mean, it's easy to translate the classics from Greek if you've got a lot of Greek people around. Also, you'll see a lot of Persians in IGA. As the Islamic Empire pushed into Sasanian territory, the Persians would add to Islamic culture with their own institutions of religion and science. You'll even see Indians making massive contributions to scientific disciplines. Outside of science, fields like law will also see massive development. Islamic religious law, known as Sharia, developed massively during IGA. A patchwork of different institutions borrowed from dozens of cultures will expand through study circles and madrasas into multiple schools of thought on the interpretation of the holy text and dispensation of Islamic law. The main thing developed is a common understanding of how to interpret scripture, also including new forms of legal reasoning such as coming to a consensus called ijam, or making legal decisions through analytical reasoning called qiyas. Will all of these considerable bonuses to diplomacy, science, and even technologies like paper make the Muslims OP against Europeans? Oh yes, you might think paper is just a silly white item, but it's not. Until paper, the only option for writing you have is papyrus. That stuff breaks up quickly. Books of papyrus can only be so long, and it doesn't absorb ink as well. This makes writing on papyrus easy to smudge or erase. Overall, the limits of papyrus make record keeping and sharing information a lot more complicated, so this new quality of life feature, paper, will make it much easier to communicate, archive, and remember, which pays huge dividends. This has me worried about the game balance overall. The lore seems to imply that many of the core features of European culture are actually from Islamic culture. They may be much more far developed than Europeans until way later in the game. Though there are some ways the devs could tweak the lore if it turns out the Islamic Empire is OP. If by the 13th century it turns out the Muslims are OP, they can always invoke the Mongols. With Genghis Khan starting a powerful Mongol empire, they could invade down into the heart of Islamic territory in, say, 1258. For all their power, if one of Genghis Khan's men, like Hulagu Khan, destroyed Baghdad and the House of Wisdom, a lot of valuable knowledge could be lost. The Islamic world would be devastated and have to start over. This could give Europeans opportunities to organize raids on Islamic territory, or for the Turks to eventually rise to power and take over. Overall, I think this is an excellent addition to the lore, and while I have my reservations about balance, I think it's overall an excellent addition to the game. Now, in my next video, I'm going to go into the patch notes and show precisely what technologies and developments are coming in IGA. If you want to see that episode, you'll need to go to a new website called The Armchair Historian. It's a platform made to give history creators a place free of the stresses of making sure that videos are advertiser friendly. If you go to the link here or in the description, there's an offer for 2 free months. So, until next time, keep gaming, and let's all hope the new climate change DLC doesn't crash the servers.